rose the clamor of regret and remonstrance, all the way from Nancy and Aunt Polly's own kitchen to the great house on the hill where lived John Pendleton. Nancy did not hesitate to say, to everybody except her mistress, that she considered this Boston trip all foolishness, and that for her part she would have been glad to take Miss Pollyanna home with her to the Corners, she would, and then Miss Polly could have gone to Germany all she wanted to. On the hill John Pendleton said practically the same thing, only he did not hesitate to say it to Mrs. Chilton herself. As for Jimmy, the 12-year-old boy whom John Pendleton had taken into his home because Pollyanna wanted him to, and whom he had now adopted because he wanted to himself, as for Jimmy, Jimmy was indignant, and he was not slow to show it. "But you've just come," he reproached Pollyanna, in the tone of voice a small boy is apt to use when he wants to hide the fact that he has a heart. "Why, I've been here ever since the last of March. Besides, it isn't as if I was going to stay. It's only for this winter." "I don't care. You've just been away for a whole year, 'most, and if I'd supposed you was going away again right off, the first thing, I wouldn't have helped one mite to meet you with flags and bands and things, that day you came from the Sanatorium." "Why, Jimmy Bean!" ejaculated Pollyanna, in amazed disapproval. Then, with a touch of superiority born of hurt pride, she observed: "I'm sure I didn't ASK you to meet me with bands and things. And you made two mistakes in that sentence. You shouldn't say 'you was,' and I think 'you come' is wrong. It doesn't sound right, anyway." "Well, who cares if I did?" Pollyanna's eyes grew still more disapproving. "You SAID you did, when you asked me this summer to tell you when you said things wrong, because Mr. Pendleton was trying to make you talk right." "Well, if you'd been brought up in a 'sylum, without any folks that cared, instead of by a whole lot of old women who didn't have anything to do but tell you how to talk right, maybe you'd say 'you was,' and a whole lot more worse things, Pollyanna Whittier." "Why, Jimmy Bean!" flared Pollyanna. "My Ladies' Aiders weren't old women. That is, not many of them so very old," she corrected hastily. Her usual proclivity for truth and literalness superseded her anger. "And "Well, I'm not Jimmy Bean, either," interrupted the boy, uptilting his chin. "You're not Why, Jimmy What do you mean?" demanded the little girl. "I've been adopted legally. He's been intending to do it all along, he says, only he didn't get to it. Now he's done it. I'm to be called Jimmy Pendleton, and I'm to call him Uncle John. Only I ain't I mean, I am not used to it yet, so I haven't begun to call him that, much." The boy still spoke crossly, aggrievedly, but every trace of displeasure had fled from the little girl's face at his words. She clapped her hands joyfully. "Oh, how splendid! Now that you've really got folks that care, you know, and you won't ever have to explain that he wasn't born your folks, 'cause your name's the same now. I'm so glad, glad, glad!" The boy got up suddenly from the stone wall where they had been sitting and walked off. His cheeks felt hot, and his eyes smarted with tears. It was to Pollyanna that he owed it all, and this great good that had come to him, and he knew it. And it was to Pollyanna that he had just now been saying. He kicked a small stone fiercely, then another and another. He thought those hot tears in his eyes were going to spill over and roll down his cheeks in spite of himself. He kicked another stone, then another. Then he picked up a third stone and threw it with all his might. A minute later he strolled back to Pollyanna, still sitting on the stone wall. "I bet you I can hit that pine tree down there before you can," he challenged airily. "Bet you can't!" cried Pollyanna, scrambling down from her perch. The race was not run after all, for Pollyanna remembered just in time that running was yet one of the forbidden luxuries for her. But so far as Jimmy Bean was concerned, it did not matter. His cheeks were no longer hot. His eyes were not threatening to overflow with tears. Jimmy was himself again. CHAPTER 3